Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to Muslim Network TV Canada Today Youth Edition. This is your brother and host, Muhammad Maxwell Hassan here. Oh boy, we got a doozy for you. We got a great topic that I think can relate to so many youth, especially during this time. Now, as a student, let's say university student, college student, high school student, the world is such a confusing and complex place. You can imagine people are, one figuring out what to do next. I mean, should I go here? Should I go there? And what about my health? And what about my mental health? And what about this? And what about that subject? And how I gotta please my parents over here. I gotta do this then, and it's just confusing. It's a mess. It's like you got this tightrope that you have to constantly walk all the time. And so how do we find that balance? How do we find that balance in our life, especially because this deen teaches us about balance? And so here with us today to uncover the difficulties, here to kind of shed light on this topic in particular, mashallah, we got a brother by the name of Haider Khan, and mashallah, he was born in Houston, Texas. Don't mess with Texas, as they say, raised in Toronto, but never forgetting his Pakistani roots, mashallah. Haider Khan is a third year, not first, not second, but a third year student at McMaster University studying engineering and business. Man, what a lethal combination there, man. Whether it be entrepreneurship, martial arts, social media, or politics, he's passionate about creating positive change in the lives of his family, peers, communities, and organizations. Mashallah, brother Haider. Awesome having you on the show. Really looking forward to this whole conversation, especially something that's really needed now that with the whole pandemic situation, everything's kind of all mixed around. So as a starting point, I always like to have our guests share stories, and in particular, in a nutshell, your story. Why is this topic so important to you in particular in terms of like having that balance? Is there a moment in your life? Is there like that Hollywood moment where you just realize that things just didn't work as anticipated, and that led you to, discovering this? I mean, in a nutshell, if you can share a little bit about yourself and this, then we can dive deeper into this whole conversation.
Of course, Brother Max. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I love your long and luscious hair. It's super pleasing to look at. But in regards to the question you asked, that one key moment for me that made me realize why this topic was so important was actually the final year of high school. Now, we all know, you go through the 4 years of high school, and then when you reach grade 12, you have to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life as a career. And for me, that process was filled with so much anxiety and so much stress that I didn't know what is it that I want to do. And like going through that stress and, having those discussions with my parents and things like that, it led me through a lot of reflection. And through that reflection, I had to think about, what exactly do I want out of my life? What does success mean to me? And I realized that I want to be successful in all aspects of that word. That includes health, that includes passion, that includes purpose, security, meaning, joy. And how can I go about achieving that success? And I realized that, going through the 4 years of high school, my key focus was, get good grades, study hard, and then eventually you can take care of the rest. Spending time with family, you can do that later. Taking care of your fitness, you can do that later. Taking care of your mental health, okay, that can come later as well. I just need to get good grades. And, going through that thought process of what I wanted to do in university and where I wanted to go with my life, it made me come to the conclusion that I have a lot of imbalances. There's so many things that I want to be successful in order to reach that top, that top goal that I have, that I'm neglecting right now. And that was the key moment which made me dive a lot into finding that balance into my life.
Fair enough, man. Mashallah. So that pivotal moment, especially I can remember as if it was yesterday when it was high school, and it's daunting. Now all of a sudden here you are, just shoved into the world. Now figure out what you got to do for yourself. It is what it is. I appreciate that. Oh, by the way, before I forget, man, I appreciate the comment about the luscious hair, man. It's very. This is the pandemic look, you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. But hey, you gotta go with the flow. So I mean, I hear you loud and clear. It's such a big deal, especially now, and you start to realize it. You see the cracks in your life. You start noticing that there's some imbalance, and it shows up. So let's look actually a bit more into that now. In your humble opinion, based on what you've seen, let's focus, because this is a Muslim Network TV. This is the show, particularly with the Muslim youth. Have you noticed any general observations, any patterns, any trends in terms of how maybe there's an imbalance going on among the youth, especially students? What have you seen?
Yeah, for sure. Being in my third year of university, I've had one experience actually being in person. And then my second year and this upcoming third year look like they're going to be online. But in my first year, I noticed that everyone who lived on residency and people who were like commuting to university, their only target was their studies, which is good. It's really good to pursue your studies. But at the same time, I had conversations with various individuals. I'm also a part of the student government at McMaster University. So I have these discussions on what I can do to improve their overall experience. And a lot of them tell me that they're not happy with their lives despite being in the program that they wanted to be in and doing well in their studies. Now, that made me realize even more that, you know, like I said before, they're not taking care of their physical health. Neither are they taking care of their mental health. And especially for the Muslim youth, they're disconnected from their deen. And I find that that disconnect comes from not knowing that your deen kind of facilitates how you should be in the dunya. You know, it's like a tool that's used within your everyday life. It's not separate from that. It's not like I'm going to my dunya now I'm going to take time for deen, now I'm going to go back to dunya. It's a part of that life. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah. So let's dive a bit deeper into that whole aspect of, okay, I mean, maybe a lot of people can relate to this pattern. Let's talk about the commuters in particular. So you get up, you go to school, and then you go home, and then that's it. Like, it's just that same pattern. You wake up, do the assignment, do the test, finish the project, and then on to the next, finish that course. Like, why aren't more people taking a step back and actually saying, wait a minute, what am I doing with my life? Why do you think that is? Why aren't people being more introspective in their own lives? Have you?
Yeah, for sure. Similar to the initial question you asked about that pivot point in my life. So that pivot point was a catalyst that led to me actually reflecting on what is important to me. And I think what's lacking nowadays, especially with social media and using our devices all the time, and like it feels like life is just like a quick race. You know, you just keep going. Nobody wants to take that step back and reflect, where exactly are they going? You know, you could be going at 100 miles per hour, but then you want to end up in like Houston, Texas, but then you end up in Arizona. At the end of the day, somebody going at 50 miles per hour will end up where they need to go, you know? So that's one key thing that I see in a lot of my peers, is that they're working really hard. They're busy for the sake of being busy. But at the end of the day, they haven't taken that step back to think, what does success mean to me? Where do I want to go? What do I need to do to get there? They just go for the sake of going.
Okay. You that's it, man. You open the floodgates, because there's just one debate that's been going around, this buzzword and all of this. I would love to hear your take on it. You know, this hustle culture. You know, people are saying hustle. You gotta, the millions. You gotta, you gotta. You gotta do that. You gotta make sure that you are, stay up. You only operate on 2 hours of sleep a day, and you just gotta work. You gotta sweat, and okay. Now let's unpack that a bit. In your opinion, what's this whole thing about hustle culture? Is this? I mean, is there some truth to it? Is it a complete, story that people are sold on? What do you think of that?
Now, hustle culture can be broken down into two things. One, there's the positive hustle culture, and then there's the negative. The negative hustle culture would be associated with that toxic environment of everyone is competing against each other, wanting to step on top of each other. And the attitude is that, I want to make sure I work harder than the other person. And that's not wrong, but they work harder with no good intent to exactly where they want to go. But on the positive side of hustle culture, I do think that it's associated with working hard, and hard work beats talent any day, right? As long as you have direction and you know where you want to go.
All right, you're on the. I see what you're saying. Like, on the fence here. So there's pros and cons to it. It's just a matter though. I don't know. There's that connotation when you're saying you have to hustle. Okay, let's talk about maybe one aspect of it, about the sleep deprivation. I'm sure you've heard a lot of stories. You look at celebrities. They're saying they work day in and day out to get to where they are, and they own mansions, and they're famous because they put in 20 hours of work when people are willing to. So then maybe let's just look at that for a second. What do you make of that sort of angle on this whole hustle culture? Is it, because circling back to the beginning when you were saying that you want success in every sense of the word, and it sounds like balance is the key here for you. Success is not, and correct me if I'm wrong, success is not simply being super zeroed in, focused on one thing at the expense of everything else. No, in your eyes, like what would be a perfect, world of success is that you have your prayers intact, you got your family intact, you got your mental health intact, you got your physical health intact. You have your bank is okay. All of that, all your ducks are in a row. But then when it comes to, let's say, that hustle culture where people are just saying, let's zero in and focus in on this one thing at the expense of, and what do you make of that?
I think you touched upon a key word, which, like dedicating 20 hours a day towards that one task is good, but as long as it is also not at the expense of other things. And like, for example, with like our mental health and our physical health and our family and things like that, like people have to understand that, in this life, they're all part of the journey. It's not like you end one thing, you reach the destination, and then you can start this thing. Like, you can't end your hustle. Okay, now that I've become successful in this, now I'm going to give time to my family. Until this point, now that I've done this, now I'm going to give time to my fitness. And then I've done this, now I'm finished that, and I start something new. Like, you have to simultaneously be able to progress in all those things. And that's why I suffered, because, back in high school, I was just dedicating time towards my studies. For example, my relationships weren't there. I wasn't giving time to my friends, and that suffered. I wasn't giving time to my sisters and my parents, and those relationships suffered. And I look back at what you were saying, which is, in a way, I'm working like that. I'm in that hustle culture. I'm studying hard. I'm working like however many hours just dedicated towards that. It's my lifestyle is wake up and then eat breakfast, go to school, come back, do some homework, maybe play some video games, and then eat, go to sleep, repeat. Right. So I'm in that hustle culture, but I'm not happy. I don't wake up. And I didn't wake up, in the past, like I didn't wake up with the feeling of, I'm ready to tackle this day. I'm ready to win this day. I'm like, oh, it's just another day. Let's just go through it. Let's get back into that hustle, And I think that is the key thing that people need to understand, that if that hustle is making you excited and you're really enjoying your life, that you wake up the next day and you're ready to take it all again, then feel free to do so. But I don't think there's going to be many people like that who are neglecting their health and their family and their relationships and their deen. And if they're neglecting those things, I really don't think that they can be happy with just hustle. What do you think, Brother Max?
Oh, man. So I hear you loud and clear. I think plenty of evidence, plenty of stories to share. About the whole litmus test of happiness, right? Where you're saying that, as long as you're happy, then if it's okay. Like, for everyone to each their own. Some people, they don't mind spending hours at the office, or, for students, they don't mind spending all that time at night trying to study and get those 90s, get those 95s, get that 100. But then the curious thing is when when you're left unfulfilled, you're saying, I put in all this effort, put in all this energy. It's not easy getting straight 95s, getting a 4.0 GPA. Ask anyone, like any anyone who's in that, they know it's hard work, definitely.
Definitely.
But when it comes to the issue of hustle culture, I don't know what it is. It's something sold for so many people. But again, this is what I wanted to not remember. I'm like thinking as what was going to be the train of thought here is that when you're saying until, right? I think that's the key. I will work on stuff until I reach this phase. Then I can work on something else. Then I can do it. Let me get that $1 million in my bank. Then I can go to Hajj. Then I can take care of my mom or my dad.
You don't know if you're gonna even get a tomorrow, like.
So that's the key. So I wanted to mention that to you. Like when you say simultaneously, I mean that's balance. Okay, let's look at the average life of a student. Let's say I'm a university student, and right now on my plate I got 5 courses, and each of them takes all this time. And then here comes the dean as well. I got to make sure that I get my prayers in. And then on top of that, I got to make sure that I call mom and dad or what have you if they're not living with them. And then also, so does it feel overwhelming if this whole simultaneous nature? Like, how do you mitigate that? I guess maybe we can start more into let's get into the practicalities of how to maintain that balance and how it looks like.
On that philosophy of you don't know if you're gonna have it tomorrow, obviously you plan your goals and you create action plans with anticipation for the future, right? I have this goal that I want to become a black belt in martial arts by X date. This is my action plan to achieve it. So that's something different. In regards to everyday life, I kind of want to start and end my day feeling like I killed the day. Like I really own this day. And for me, those things, and to give a practical aspect of it, is time towards family, time towards myself, like my body, taking care of my nutrition, making sure that I have some sort of meditation reflection point in that time as well, deen as well as my passions and my school. Now, the way that I personally like to plan out the day is I use a lot of calendars. I find that when I assign time to something within a calendar, I'm more conscious towards it. I know that from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. is my morning routine. What encompasses my morning routine? Reading Quran Pak and doing my workout. So now I know mentally that I have time dedicated to this task and I know it's going to be done. So given time to deen in terms of reading the Quran and the tarjuma, and then also giving time to my fitness. Check. Good. Then I know, okay, I'm going to start my work, my actual, you can say like either school work or outside of school internship or whatever at 9 a.m. Starts 9 a.m. I'm going to work until like 4 or 5 p.m., have breakfast, good healthy food in between. And I manage that. Check. Taking care of that. Now I know that other things come in the day that are unexpected, and there's a lot of flexibility. There's no point in living your life completely structured all the time. There's things that are going to come that you won't expect, and that's okay. There is room for that flexibility. But then there's also time dedicated, okay, from 8 to 9 is for my family. No matter what, put devices away, it's straight up just family time. And I put in time in the calendar so I know consciously, no matter what else I need to do, that time is going to my family. And then when I go to sleep, like, I just think to myself that today is an amazing day. I spent time with family at the end of the day. I did what I needed to do within that 9 to 4 period. I took care of my fitness in the morning. I also made sure that I read Quran. Like, it just feels like, you own the day and you go to sleep feeling so good, and then you wake up the next morning excited to do it all over again. So, Nanakasa, if my day ends and my life ends, then I've ended it in a way where I'm very satisfied with the day.
Interesting. And so it's that self-satisfaction. You go to bed and you have that conversation with yourself in a way to say, like, have I really owned the day, or did I let it slip by without any meaningful contribution or any meaningful progress? Now, you mentioned, the whole dividing things up. I remember there was this one, I don't know if I shared this with you, or if you've heard of this, about the Myoff theory. You know that? My time, your time, our
Yes.
time, family time. So that's that. So in case if anyone doesn't know it, this is, I believe, Sheikh Ala from ISNA. He had this theory that he put out there, or at least I heard it from him, where there's this Myoff theory. So MYOF means so that for everyday schedule. So speaking to what you were mentioning about the whole calendar,
I do think, sorry to interrupt, that might have inspired this as well. Like my thinking now, because I remember you mentioning it to me a couple of years back in, I think it was a khutbah that you were doing or a halaqah at Sayyidah Khadija Center, and I do think that was also one of the catalysts in my thinking now. But yes, you were
oh
saying.
no way, mashallah, look at that. Hey, I mean, take credit for all praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I mean, I just want to share, because when you're saying that, it reminded me of that, like compartmentalization of it. So my time, your time, our time, and family time. This was dedicated more to the people who are married and have kids, because that's another that's another whole discussion. Imagine we're just talking as students, Masha. You're responsible for yourself as a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, as a student, and you're not responsible for a family. Now imagine you bring in a spouse, and on top of that, you got some little ones running around. Oh boy, the whole balance goes out of whack. But for those, so my time, your time, our time, family time. I think when you deliberately go through that, then it can make things a lot easier to ingest. Now, let me play devil's advocate for a moment, Hader, because let's say there are some people who they don't like writing things in a calendar. It's not in them. They don't like writing it down. They don't like sticking to that regimen. They just kind of they want to go through the day willy-nilly and just kind of have a rough idea of what I'm going to do, and that's it. What do you say about those? Like, is there anything out there that you could recommend, or could you offer a perspective on people who just aren't deliberate in writing things down and making things happen that way?
Yeah, for sure. I've had multiple mentors, career coaches, and my martial arts instructors, and a lot of people who I look up to tell me that goals and action plans are essential to success. And similar to before, in whatever that means to you, in whatever aspects that word means to you. And the reason that they say that goals and action plans are so important is because it gives you guidance on how you want to approach things. And an essential step in defining your goals and your action plans is to write them down. And if you're not somebody who likes to write things down, I think either one, you need to develop that inside of you, or two, be able to very mentally define the goal and the action plan towards those things. So if you're not somebody who's necessarily going to write down that from at around 8 p.m. I'm going to spend time with family, then you need to make some sort of conscious decision that needs to happen. But from what I've found is when you just leave it in your brain, it's always just up in the air, right? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's just up in the air. But the minute you write it down, it solidifies that idea, that concept, that task so much more. So to those who don't necessarily like to write things down, I would highly suggest to develop that habit, because it'll help you to take action and to actually do those things that you've set your mind on.
2 follow-up questions. I'm going to go with one at a time. So let me see. Could you share with us a prime example in your life where when you maybe have you always been like a writer, always written things down, or just okay, so you haven't. Okay, good. So can you share with us a prime example of when you wrote things down, because you haven't, you weren't like this all the time. It wasn't built into your DNA. So you developed this skill, or you developed this perspective in terms of writing things down. Can you share with us an example, a prime example, when you wrote things down and it actually happened, and like what results that led to? Curious to know.
Sure. Now, I started martial arts when I was in grade 7, and what happened was that my goal ever since I started was I want to achieve my black belt. And what needs to happen for me to achieve that? What is my action plan, right? And prior to developing that skill of writing things down and creating an action plan, I was just going with the flow. I was just attending class just 2 to 3 times a week and then going through the motions. And I realized my progress wasn't as fast as other students. And I was like, why isn't, like I'm doing these things that I needed to do? But afterwards, in retrospect, I look back, there were so many things that I was forgetting. Like my sensei would mention to me, Heather, make sure that you attend this seminar. This will really develop yourself for the next grading that you're going to do for your next belt. And I'd be like, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll make sure I'll do it. And I'm going to take a conscious note of it. And the following day I would forget. Things would come up, life happens. I had a school project due the following day and I forgot to do that. And that delayed my belt grading by at least 3 to 4 months. And that happened throughout my belt stages. And then when I finally developed that skill of writing down my goals and my action plans and things that I need to get done and even scheduling them, I was able to write down goal, get to this grading. What needs to be done? I need to attend 3 seminars. I need to make sure I read this book. I need to make sure I complete this task. And then as I would be going through things, my sensei would mention, oh, this is also something you need to do. Okay, I write that down. Now it's plotted, it's scheduled that this thing will be done. And then I can just tick it off. This has been done, this has been done, this has been done, and now I'm ready. And to show that that was successful, ever since I started this habit around grade 12, my progress has tripled, and I'm about to actually grade for my black belt this Friday. So,
MashaAllah, man. Oh, this is good, man. National news, you're amazing, man. I don't mean to interrupt you, but man, I gotta cut you off one moment. Like, what made you decide? Right, because you say it was kind of lackluster. It took you some time. You kind of were going, but then you said, when I developed that habit, what was that moment? Like, what was there somebody who shook you and it's like you write things down? Did you just have an epiphany? Did you wake up one day and you're like, that's it, man, I'm just fed up with this, and I'm really upset with my lack of what was that thing that made you?
It was actually a sit down conversation with my sensei. My sensei was like, you have so much potential. Like, you lead classes and you're a highly performing individual. Like why aren't you progressing at the rate that you're delivering in class? You're amazing in class, but at the same time, your progress doesn't show that. There is some sort of disconnect. Like, what's going on? And that sit down session with the sensei, as well as a reflection after that, was what led me to actually writing things down.
Man, so that was a catalyst, huh? So you had that sit down, mashallah, man. 2 thumbs up to the sensei who even bothered to sit you down, because maybe not painting everyone with the same brush. Maybe some people would just kind of say, well, it is what it is, People come and go, it is what it is. But he actually took the time to hey there, man, look you in the eyes and say, what's going on, man? You're not tapping into your, that's awesome. But hey, that's one of those moments.
There are, I think, to success in anything, the people that you look up to, your mentors, like my sensei and things like that, like the guidance you receive from them. Even you, Brother Max, you told me about this concept of my time, our time, family time. All those things really make a difference in somebody's life, right? In understanding that, balance is important, writing things down is important. So I give huge kudos to yourself and all those mentors out there, and I recommend to all youth, please find mentors, find people you look up to and learn from them, learn from their mistakes, ask them questions, and yeah, definitely.
Awesome, man. I reciprocate that, man. Learning from you just as much as you're learning from me, man. That's amazing. I appreciate the kind words and generosity there. Now, the other kind of question I had is that, again, playing devil's advocate today, why not? Just to see how it's 2 sides of a different coin. Yeah. Writing things down, again, let's just say you develop that habit. Let's say someone isn't used to writing down their agenda, they don't have anything said, they're not deliberate. And let's just say they do write things down. And they say, well, they wake up one day and like, all right, you know what? Starting tomorrow, I am going to write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they don't accomplish it. They start small, and they still just don't accomplish it, and it's very discouraging that they don't cross off that laundry list of things. Any suggestions there? Any perspective that you can offer for those who just they said and they would say I tried and it just didn't work out? What would you offer for that?
People have to understand that somebody else isn't living your life for you. Somebody else isn't telling you to do X, Y, Z. That was a huge step for me when I went from elementary to middle school to high school to university, where, in elementary and middle school, my courses were all selected for me. I never had to put in that extra work to figure out what I wanted to take. High school, a bit more courses were selected, but I had some options like what exactly do I want to take business or do I want to take computer science? And then university, it was all me. Like, what exactly is it that I want to take? And I say those people need to understand that this is your life. Like, you need to take the time and really reflect on what is important to you. And the thing that you're writing down, if it's not important to you, then fine. Don't go after it. Don't take that initiative on it. But I believe that if something is really important to you, then you will be conscious about it. You will dedicate time towards it. So all the way back to what we were initially saying, that this hustle culture is good and everything. It's important to work hard, but at the same time, it's equally as important to take one step back and have those moments of reflection to really figure out what is important, then write it down, and then you will have that motivation to achieve whatever it is that you've written down, and you won't neglect it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So it's knowing it's like knowing thyself, right? It's easier said than done. People are like, who are you? Man, like, who am I? Who are you? So I guess not getting discouraged if the first day, Rome wasn't built in a day. So I guess building a new habit isn't something that's, just out of nowhere. Because then if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, and therefore it would detract from the significance and excellence of it, right? So it's hard. I don't know. It's hard to build a new habit, but I guess it's one of those Hollywood moments that you need, especially with your sensei, with the people that you look up to, and the mentors that you surround yourself with. This all like chips away at for those who, let's just say, are at the staring down the barrel of what they're looking at, in terms of their life. And but maybe if I can ask you this as well. Let's just say I heard this analogy put, and I know it's a little off-putting, but it makes sense. Like, in terms of if someone is overweight, and again, no offense to those who are, for those who are, let's say, overweight because of overeating, they're not taking care of their diet, they're not looking at themselves properly, they just there's no filter, they just eat whatever, and then all of a sudden they have a heart attack. Like, the heart attack is a symptom that your heart is saying, like, your body is telling you gotta change yourself, otherwise it's gonna, everything is gonna go downhill and it's gonna be very disastrous. Do people need to have that heart attack moment to wake up and actually have that reflection as to the whole 9 to 5 or the whole student experience of just walking in, taking my class, walking out? I mean, does it take that level of, oh my gosh, I gotta wake up, or is there something that you can do consciously to have those moments of reflection?
Yeah, that's a really good point you make, because as you've asked me throughout this discussion, Heather, what was that pivot point? What was it? And to give you that answer to the question you were asking, it really depends on the person. I've found that sometimes I've had discussion with my friends where I've seen that they have imbalances in their lives. They've told me that they're unhappy with their life, but it doesn't matter however many times I tell them that this is not good or this is good. It requires something for them. Like, something has to happen to them for them to realize, oh, what Heather was saying was right. Maybe I should start working on it now. So a lot of people do require that pivot point, but there are also other people who have the ability to learn from others' mistakes and learn from others' experiences. So I can't really define that to one certain answer. It really does depend on the person.
So let's actually focus on the second option that you offer. So we can't control a lot of times if someone, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that everyone is safe and sound. If someone gets into a car accident, for example, or something like that's really traumatic, sometimes there are some things you can't control. But the learning from other people's mistakes is something you can control. Let's just say if someone, how do you develop that in a way? I mean, is there anything that I don't want to say do you have that gene that's built into you, but how do you mitigate through that?
Yeah, I guess when somebody shares their experience that, oh, this didn't go well, one, you have to have value for what the person is saying, right? A lot of the times you have so many different people giving you advice that you're just like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna just move on with my life. You don't really pay attention to what they're exactly saying. So I say put value into what the person is saying, and when you put value into the person and what they're saying, then you're able to actually take what they're saying seriously and try to actually apply it. And when you take it seriously and they share their mistakes, then when you go through everyday life, you can recall on that, and when it's coming close to happening to you, you can avoid it. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Interesting. So you gotta value what people are. It makes sense. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, if we were to just look back at least from that example, man, 40 years of his life. He wasn't a prophet, but he built credibility. His actions, his character, that's what was solid. So when it came time for him to, once it was revealed that he was a prophet, people naturally gravitated towards him. Some people, of course, they gravitated away from his, or they were repelled by his message. But either way, it was that credibility factor. Like, do I trust or value what he's saying? So if his character is so much to the point that people would trust him with their valuables more than their own close family members, that speaks volumes, right? That's a real stamp of approval. So exactly. I like what you're saying, man, Spal, in terms of like that whole, do you place value? Do you listen to just anyone, or do you have to first value what that person's saying?
And that also ties into what you're saying about the Prophet. We place value in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's why we learn from his experiences. That's what the Sunnah is for, right? So I think that's huge. Placing value in the person, learning from their mistakes, and then being able to go about your life that way.
Man, I know, like, so many people, they look at sports icons. I know now with the NBA final, or the playoffs, like they're close to the finals. So many people look up to sports stars and such. It's hard, sometimes, especially for the Muslim youth. We're talking about students here that it's hard to, like, how do you compete with that versus 1400 years ago, you're reading in a book, that you have the companions of the Prophet that just really, like, man, you hear the stories and it's just out of this world. But like, when you hear stories of, let's just say how do you maybe have that sort of thing? If you were to tie a little bit to the Dean's teachings, if you're competing with today's sports stars, you go on Instagram, you go on Twitter, you go on Facebook, you go on YouTube, you search social media in general, and we're living in this whole world. How do you, again, have that balance? How do you find and seek that balance in the Deen when you're up against this culture this North American culture that we're in?
You mentioned that there's this celebrity, that celebrity, and our youth today, they look up to those celebrities, right? In that same way, I think that is a message to us, us people who are like trying to progress in our careers and our lives. You have like Khabib Nurmagomedov, I can't even pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
You have Khabib, you have N'Golo Kante in football, but you guys call it soccer. And you have Enes Kanter, for example, in the NBA. You have these Muslim figures who role model really good like behavior and like Islam's teachings in regards to their humility and the way that they carry themselves. So you mentioned that, you know, the prophet, like the youth today can't maybe might not be able to relate to him as much, but that puts, I wouldn't say pressure, but it's like a reminder for us, people who are progressing in their careers, that we should role model desired behavior. We should be at that level where youth look up to us and be like, okay, I want this trait inside myself, and then afterwards we can attach it to Islam as well, and that could be a potential pathway.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, this deen is not cheap. That's the thing. It's expensive. Yeah. You gotta hunt for it. You gotta dig deep into it. But mashallah, the treasures of the Quran, the treasures of the Sunnah of the Prophet, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be people that really embody it in the best way possible, to be a light not only for ourselves but for others as well. Yeah. Because I'm thinking, because for me, and you as well, like you were raised in Toronto, so we're used to the whole Canadian culture. I mean, I was growing up with the whole North American culture, man. I'm just thinking about drawing from examples of celebrities and people that that I've seen. Like I remember, the late Kobe Bryant. One of the biggest lessons that I learned from him in one of his interviews that speaks to this particular topic is that people fall in love with the product, but not the process. They fall in love with the product, but they don't want to go through all the nitty gritty of achieving that balance. Like balance doesn't just happen in one day. If there's a balancing act, you go to the circus and you see those people with those spinning dishes or spinning things. Right? I mean, like, do they just wake up one day and they just like, here you go? No, man, it takes how much effort and practice, how many broken plates they had to do.
Yeah, very good point.
In order for them to reach that level. So many people fall in love with the product and the end result, all the money, the fame, the glory, but they forget about what it took to get them there. Now, I guess part of what we're trying to discuss and uncover is getting there, right? For us as Muslims, especially because we're caged with the deen, in a good, not in a bad way, not a negative connotation. Like we can't just achieve success wherever. We can't just go right now to the lottery and get hit the jackpot, and then boom, you become a millionaire. Like there's certain restrictions in that regard, right? So it's just how to get to that process is what that is. So
no, that is, getting to that process is really important, and I appreciate that you brought like deen back into this, because I would kind of summarize this whole concept of balance with the deen. At the end of the day, I'd like to speak for myself personally, and then I would love people to kind of make connections with their own lives. So for me personally, at the top, you can imagine it as a pyramid. At the top of that pyramid, my ultimate goal is I want to enter Jannah. I believe that our Jannah is encompassed with eternal happiness, meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meeting the prophets, and I want to enter there. What do I need to do to enter there? And those aspects include taking care of my relationships, taking care of my health, taking care of like my Islamic studies, and like a lot of it has to do with becoming an amazing role model for Islam in this dunya. And then it comes to that balance point of take care of all those things. And you were asking, some people they write things down and then they sometimes, or they don't even write things down, and then they might do it, they might not do it. And that now ties down to the final point I wanted to make about the why factor, right? Why is it that you want to do this, right? When I was talking about that reflection, you need to figure out what success means to you. It all comes together with, why are you doing this? Why am I investing time with my relationships? Why am I investing time with my family? For me, I want to be able to have a good relationship with my family, because it all ties down to that ultimate goal that I want to achieve. So a lot with balance is identifying the why factor of what you're doing and then tying it down to the main goal that you have in mind.
MashaAllah, man, that's amazing stuff. Now, looks like I always hate to say this, but we're nearing the end. All good things must come to an end. But I'd be remiss if we didn't have this final opportunity curtain call. In particular, are there any resources that you could offer? I know we talked about calendars and writing things down. Any particular tools that people can use? Any maybe YouTube channels that they could watch, or anything in particular that you found to be tremendously helpful for students to really get that balance in their lives? Is there anything that you can point towards? And then after the resources, if there's any final golden words of advice, you got a brother, you got a sister who's watching this and they're like, I don't know what to do with my life and I'm feeling like I'm all bent out of shape, if there's any parting words as well. So if there's any resources and parting words.
In terms of resources, I would recommend looking into this book called Make Today Count. I forgot the author. I do have the book in my bookshelf, but it's an amazing book. It's called Make Today Count.
You want to grab that? You want to grab it if you
Yeah, for sure.
In the meantime, don't worry, I'll be here. Don't worry. You can yeah, to me. So now, Make Today Count sounds like a man. I remember that reminds me of a quote from Muhammad Ali, the late great Muhammad Ali, where he's saying, don't count the days, but make the days count. So that's one thing that sparks it. So it looks like, Haider, you got the book. If you have it with you, yeah, go for it.
You know, fun fact, look at the author's name.
Oh, no way, huh?
John C. Maxwell.
Yeah, that's it.
In honor of Brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan.
Yeah.
I recommend y'all really read this book. It's really helped me find that balance and be able to focus on those different things. And parting words to all of the youth out there, really reflect. Take a step back. You know, hustle is important. Everyone needs to work hard, but take a step back to find out what exactly you're working hard for. And if any of y'all just want to hit me up and have these discussions, I'm more than happy to do so. And I had a pleasure speaking with you, Brother Max.
Oh man, Brother Haider, the pleasure is all mine. MashaAllah, it's amazing having this conversation, introspection. It's wonderful having youth, man, like that to really actually, you know, take the time to take a step back and not just go through the motions, actually being deliberate and MashaAllah, writing things down for it to come true. Working towards it will make things that much better. So MashaAllah, Jazakallah khairan, Brother Haider, really appreciate your time and your thoughts on this whole topic of finding balance as a student. MashaAllah. So let me chat right now with the audience directly here, with the viewers. Now, we talked already about this whole situation of balance. You know, I'm going to circle back to the whole analogy of you know, when you go to the circus and you have those spinning plates, and you're like, well, in order to achieve that balance, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort, but at the same time, it is doable. It is worth it. Now, am I here to tell you that, oh, my life is perfectly balanced all the time? Absolutely not. We're not angels. I'm not an angel here to tell you that. But what I can say is that when we strive for it and when we write things down and we work towards things that are meaningful to us, then that will make all the difference. And I will leave you with this. It's a quote from Simon Sinek, and I think it will make things, inshallah, that much easier to digest. And it goes a little something like this. When you work hard, so let me start again. When you work hard for something you don't care about, that's called stress. When you work hard for something you do care about, that's called passion. So figure it out. What is it? When you're working hard, are you working hard for something you do care about, or are you working hard for something you don't care about? And that hopefully can realign and make things that much better. With that, this is your brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan. Jazakallah khairan for tuning in. Canada Today Youth Edition right here on Muslim Network TV. Tune in Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as always, stay strong, stay safe, and stay proud to be Muslims. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.